Hi there, I'm Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez, and this is the Design Your Physician Life podcast. Welcome to this episode brought to you by our Max Salary Mastermind, an exclusive personal and professional development program for physicians, where we teach you entrepreneurship. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Derrick Burgees. He's the host of the TimeOut With The SportsDr podcast. We have a great conversation with Dr. Burgees about the will to not quit. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Design Your Physician Life podcast, where you will get excited about being a physician, learn the tools that can help boost your success, and great tips from successful doctors. Join us to unlock the keys to an amazing physician life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez.
Hey guys, welcome to our episode today. We're very excited to have Dr. Derrick Burgees here. We have a wonderful episode for you. He's actually a board-certified orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist. He's the host of Time Out with the SportsDr podcast. And yes, I'm episode 67 with him if you want to go and listen to him after you listen to this one. And his podcast is the show where life, sports, and medicine intersect. Welcome to our podcast, Dr. Derrick Burgees.
Hey, thank you for having me here. I'm very glad to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we met at LGA. It's a Leverage and Growth Accelerator, which is a program for physicians. It's a group that of physicians who are interested in entrepreneurship, brought by Dr. Peter Kim, created by him. And we learned tons together. So we're very happy to have met there. And we have a wonderful topic today for physicians in around mindset, which is so important with the patients that we work with and also for ourselves. And before we get into this important topic, I want to see where Derrick got the inspiration. Was it like little Derrick or teen Derrick or maybe later in college? Tell us about how you decided to become a physician.
Yeah, so I was inspired to be a physician, I'd say probably early teen, Derrick. So I was in high school. I enjoyed math and science all through school. And I probably about ninth grade made the decision, hey, I want to pursue medicine. And then I got injured when I was in the 11th grade playing football. And that's when I met my orthopedic surgeon, Dr. John Young, who I expressed interest, and he said, you ought to come in and hang out with me. So I started to go back during my senior year of high school and shadowed in the office as well as in the OR. And I continued to go back as an undergraduate student, even as a medical student, and formed a great lifelong mentor. And he was definitely an inspiration for me.
That's super cool. So can you give us some details about the injury? Didn't stop you from playing football?
For a short period of time. So I was out for probably about 3 to 4 weeks, but it did inspire me to take on a career that's now my lifestyle. So minor setback for this great comeback, I'd say.
What was your position? What were you playing?
So I played football. I was a defensive back, cornerback in football.
Did you go on playing during college?
I didn't. I had some small school offers, but at that point, I knew that football was not going to be the career that would go forever. So I decided to choose academics at that point.
And what did you see in your mentor that was like, oh my goodness, this is the thing. This is what I want to do. What was that change, that transformation that you saw from him?
So number one, he was a person that opened up his office to me, to a teenager, which I thought was awesome. And, I had a love for sports as an athlete, and I felt that orthopedics was just a great mixture of medicine and sports. And, at that time, as a teenager, you just see this small piece, but that was enough to inspire me. Of course, orthopedics, it could have gone many different ways. Or, even in the field of medicine, I might have not even seen sports, but it was enough of an inspiration for me. And that's why I feel that I'm living my dreams, because I'm living the life, like your podcast says, I've designed my life to fit who I am as a person.
That's super cool. So let's think about your doctor mentor. And I'm sorry, what was his name again?
Dr. Young, John Young.
John Young. Okay, I didn't want to say. So Dr. Young, is he still practicing?
He is still practicing, yes.
And do you stay in touch with him, you say?
Yes.
How has it been, the transition in medicine, for him? Have you guys discussed that from his
Yes.
point of view? What
Yes.
has he
So,
told you from those days that you thought that this was such a wonderful thing to do as a teenager, going to his office and seeing what he was doing, and these days in medicine, what has he told you about that transformation?
well, I say one main thing is especially in orthopedics, going from private practice to employed physicians, I think might have been one of the biggest shifts in the field of orthopedics. Now, for the first time, it's almost 50-50 employed physicians versus private practice. And probably at that point, it was probably 80-20 or 90-10. So I think the loss of autonomy in medicine has probably been one of the biggest shifts.
Yeah. So can you imagine which sort of, from a teenager, as you say, like looking through that little lens of any teenager, now that you're a doctor and you're living your dream, is medicine what you were thinking it would be for you as a teenager? And if so, in which way?
I would say no, not completely, but still yes, in the fact that medicine is still a very respected field. You're still able to help people, which is what we all probably said in our medical school interview. However, the business of medicine has shifted and it's not necessarily in our favor at this point. So I would say that's one of the frustrating parts about medicine now compared to what I thought it would be growing up as a teenager.
So now that we're talking about designing our physician life, we have this podcast, and this podcast you've created to embrace the things that I think you love. You talk about sports and life and all these things in your podcast. What has having this podcast done for you in terms of designing your life? What sort of void or need or service you think it's filling or providing?
So I'd say first, the void I feel that it's filling is being able to have actual conversations with people. Now in a digital era where we spend so much time on text messaging or whatever, digital messaging or following each other on social media, but we don't have these meaningful conversations. So I say having the podcast has enabled me to have conversations with people that I would never talk to before. So I'd say that's one void that is probably filled. And kind of the mission behind the podcast is to inspire other people, especially minorities or first generation physicians or first generation, whatever you're doing. One of the main things is I want to be able to show my audience what's possible, especially if there are younger people listening or, someone that wants to go to medical school, law school, but they don't have another role model in their family or another person in their family who's achieved whatever they're trying to see. I want to be able to be an example to show people that you can, number one, overcome obstacles and still achieve your dream.
So that inspiration comes from somewhere. Tell us about where you are in your generations, in your family of professionals. And, we had first the obstacle of having an injury early when you were that took you to medicine, which was a great thing. You had this inspiration from Dr. Young. Which other things, and tell us about like your family that have inspired, because everything that we do has inspiration from somewhere, from who we are. That's where it's coming from. In your case, how does that, how do you serve as a model for others? What's your background there?
Yeah. So I'm a first generation physician. My mother was a first generation educator. She was the first person in her family to go to and finish college. My father was high school educated, and he was just really a hard worker. He worked in a factory my whole life, but he was also an entrepreneur. He would do whatever it takes because he wanted to be able to build something that we could step, and build off of. So when I was in elementary school, he started a car wash. When I was a little bit later, probably junior high, he got into real estate. He had not multifamily, but just single family real estate. And he was what, many times we talk about passive investment. He was the complete opposite. He was 100% active, where he did everything from buying the house to renovating the house to doing upkeep on the house to picking up the rent even. So totally different.
Did you work in those businesses yourself? Did you do the car wash and the houses? Yes. What did you do?
Yes. So it's funny. So my exact job in the car wash was cleaning out the door jambs. So I was the door jam guy, and then I had to help vacuum the cars and, of course, help watch. But my main job was making sure the door jams were clean. So
How
as an
are your
8-year-old,
current door jams?
dirty.
Bad boy.
Yes.
Does your father notice? He gets into your car and he says, "Hey, Derrick."
Yes. So you ask about inspiration. So one of my main inspirations was that I wanted to live a different lifestyle. So I ran away from the hard work to be a doctor, right? So he fooled me enough to say it's either this or you get your education. I didn't know that it was get your education and still you have to work that hard every day. But yeah, so you got back to the root cause of I was running away from the work, going to college, going to medical school. And here I am now working harder than I ever have in my life. So
you went to medical school because you were trying to be lazy?
Right. I was going to be lazy in medical school. I just wanted to be able to work hard in the air conditioning instead of outside all the time.
Well, that's done, right?
Yes.
That you did. And then you become an orthopedic surgeon. Now you're not only being a surgeon, you're also helping others with your awesome podcast. Let's talk about that, because you said some very important things. You know, you want to inspire people and tell everybody that they can achieve things that are possible. And in your case, you had your inspiration. It was a little bit misguided, right? Saying about the hard work. And however, you still have that mindset where you wanted to be something, you wanted to shift gears. You saw something that inspired you to be something different. And in your case, you know, this I can do. And then once you're there, it looked harder maybe before than when you were there. Now, you know, it's a little bit harder with the challenges that we have. But that mindset of being able to achieve what you want. Tell us about that. You know, like your parents, they were hard workers. You had the inspiration from this doctor, and something inside of you said, I can do this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So from a mindset standpoint, I learned to work ethic as a young kid and as a teenager. So when I got to medical school, I realized quickly I was not the smartest person in the room, but I also realized that I wasn't going to let anyone outwork me, and that going back was not an option. So once the ship had sailed, I was continuing to go towards the dream, and I wasn't going to really let anything get in my way. So I think taking that same mentality is why I became an orthopedic surgeon, because we can talk about the shortcomings of, you know, barely getting into medical school and not having the, you know, you're supposed to be AOA and top 5% or 2% or whatever. If you go back and look at my resume, it didn't have all those check marks. But at the same time, I said, no one's going to work harder than me. So I showed up for the rotations early. I was always the last person there. I was going to grand rounds as a medical student. And, you know, the residents knew me as someone who wanted to do orthopedics, and I was willing to do all the grunt work, even though I might not have all the academic prowess that someone else may have.
So for those who were not invited, AOA, Alpha, Omega, Alpha, I wasn't invited either, Derrick. I still made it to medical school. I still made it through my residency, through my fellowship. And, you know, they request so much from us many times. And then now we're in these positions where our life is depending on others, right? Like in talking about mindset, we might see, and I have to tell you, like this is a lot of work that we have to do. Talking about mindset, I wasn't invited to Alpha Omega Alpha in medical school, but until then, I was like at the top of everything. I was like, and even after medical school, to some extent, I had the mindset that I could achieve everything that I wanted, and I would never get a no. So that's something that can happen with the overachievers. When you get a no, when you get the frustrations are higher. In my case, like I applied to only one medical school because that's the one I wanted to go. I applied to only one fellowship, one internship, one residency, and I got all of them, which is to some extent like, I want this, and yes, I want to get it, and that's it. I didn't have a plan B for any of those things, which is great in the sense like, you know, this is what I have to do, this is what I'm going to do, and you go there. But then working on mindset, when you get to your first no, your first failure, then that can be devastating, because to some extent I was in the mindset that I can do anything, but I wasn't ready to grow from a saying no, right? And when we're getting ready for these things, there's a lot of fear, a lot of self-doubt. Am I good enough? Am I going to be able to survive this, whatever it is that the next step is? And you were able to survive it and go to orthopedic school, right? Despite not being this alpha, omega alpha that or having these other grades. Which other challenges do you think you had that inspired you through your career?
So I think I've had to overcome challenges at every level, so to speak. Finishing medical school, and then saying I want to be an orthopedic surgeon since the time I was in high school, and then not matching the first time. So what do? Do I decide to go a different route, or do I continue to tough it out? So that's another kind of crossroads that I came across. And having overcome in the past, I knew that it was still something that if I put my mind to it and continue to work hard, it was achievable. So I did a general surgery internship, and going through working 100 hours a week right before the work week was put in, and still interviewing for orthopedics. I was telling my kids about that previously, and they were like, wow, what were you doing? How did you do this? So I think that what they've seen me do now, I'm inspiring them to do more in the future.
So you're inspiring them now to get a car wash and to get a real estate business.
Yes.
Because you're working 100 hours to get into orthopedic.
Right. I'm sending them back the opposite direction now.
So let's talk about that mindset for physicians and athletes. Like right now we see many physicians telling their children not to become physicians, because we're overwhelmed, we're tired, and we have this, what we call the golden handcuffs, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes, as you say, like we worked so hard to become a physician, like you don't see anything outside that area of being a physician. That's it. And then you let that define you, and that's like your forever thing with no other outlets. So tell us about what you've learned, in your work doing mindset work, which you've been doing.
So I've learned that number one main way I feel to kind of counteract burnout is to feel like you're achieving what you were put on this earth to do. And, we both have white coats, but we're both more than a physician. And I feel that many times we work so hard to become a physician, and it has clout in the community of being a physician, but at the same time, just being a physician and seeing patients and doing surgery and now doing paperwork, for hours and hours upon a time can burn you out. So I did not want that to happen. And one thing with this pandemic, it was a wake-up call, because we have what is supposed to be a foolproof profession, and to see doctors being laid off, doctors being fired. My wife is a dentist being laid off for 6 to 8 weeks. I realized, okay, just being a physician might not be enough, even from a financial standpoint. When you have to rely on a hospital system or rely on other people, you want to be able to be sufficient in your own being. So that's when I began to see myself more as an entrepreneur, and started doing things and starting this podcast and being able to talk to other physicians like you, and being in LGA and seeing all the great work that physicians are doing, from writing books to doing courses to being in real estate. It was all inspirational to me. I've always been someone who, from being in the car wash to selling T-shirts in medical school, I've always had that entrepreneurship inside of me, but it was really, I needed something else to stir it back up. I had gotten comfortable with the handcuffs being on, comfortable getting that paycheck every month. And I just needed something to kind of rouse me again. And I think the pandemic did that.
So you've identified the problem, right? The problem is that we are feeling burnout. We don't have like creativity, and our lives are depending on others. And historically, physicians were able to do all these things, right? As as a practice owner, private practice, you are an entrepreneur. You have to make it work. You have the securities historically of the insurance income with those patients coming through the door, but still you have to run a practice. You have to do some sort of marketing, make sure that you handle your personnel well, and you just have to make it work. And because you are in charge of the patient's experience, your employees' experience, then that gave you much more happiness, regardless of being, such a harder work, as many hours. But as those things are taken away, because we wanted to focus on being physicians, right? And then the systems changed and we gave away those rights. We historically physicians as a profession gave them. Then now we are like having this situation where we don't have those outlets. We're not in control. And that's a problem with happiness. Happiness is defined also by, one of the things that you have control of what's going to be in your future. So identifying the problem. And then number 2, understanding that you have options, right? As you say,
Correct.
In your case, you had a background, an entrepreneurial background that was given to you through the example of Dr. Young, your parents, or your father, in that case. And then you've done things before, like with selling the T-shirts in medical school when you were selling those. And then after that, you didn't stop there. You looked for help. So you joined this group that we are on, for example, we're in, and then you also created something, an outlet for yourself. So you did that and identify the problem, know that there are options for that, and then looking for help. And as physicians, as I said, we're just blinded. Have you seen with the recording of your podcast, have you seen any particular example that really struck you from those physicians who were very stuck, and then when they flourished, like it was such a big change in their life, the transformation? Any particular story that comes to mind?
Yeah, so there are many stories, but I'll just stick to one that's close to home. Your previous guest with Dr. Ronnie Shalev, and being an ER physician and knowing early on in her career that she was suffering from burnout, so to speak, as an ER physician, but having enough confidence to pivot and to start pursuing entrepreneurship, start pursuing real estate, and now has been able to be financially independent and walk away from medicine and be able to live their life as an entrepreneur and to be able to help other people and teach other people about real estate and about investing.
So Dr. Shalev was a great example there. She's been able to successfully, oh my goodness, she's done so much, especially multifamily these days, and she's teaching other physicians to do that. In my experience here, I've seen a lot of doctors, not only through the podcast, but also in our groups, who have been finding outlets to, as I said, for their creativity and everything. But these, you can call them physician side gigs, or you can call them some other types of businesses, are allowing them to remain in medicine, practicing medicine. And that's what we want at the end. We've had so much burnout. I was a victim of burnout myself more than once. And having these outlets really allow me to be able to continue to practice medicine. We are right now in our new practice. We're so happy. We opened in August 2022, and we're having our upcoming open house. And it's a lot of work, but it's so satisfying to have this work, because you have the control, and you know that you can control that, the patient's experience, the employee's experience, and your experience. So that's really good. Being an athlete and being a physician right now, in terms of mindset, how has that helped? And working with athletes, like you're working with athletes all day long, where losing is not an option. The same thing with physicians, it's not an option. How do you see a correlation, something that you can say, okay, you take from athletes and you bring to physicians to tell them, hey, there's options here. How do you make that transformation?
I feel that there's many correlations between being a physician and being an athlete. One major one, many times with athletes, they're told to shut up and dribble or shut up and play. And I feel that sometimes as physicians, we're told the same thing. Go see more patients, go do more surgeries. Don't worry about the business. We'll take care of the business. You just see the see the patients. And I think that maybe to many instances, we've been lulled to sleep with that because historically we have been entrepreneurs as physicians. And as we start to move more into employed positions, we might have lost that entrepreneurship. So I think that's one thing. And another quote that many athletes tell me is, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And I think that in entrepreneurship, that's always the key. You need to be able to have the foresight to know what's going to be coming from many different angles, and being able to pivot in real time, I think, is another great key for entrepreneurs.
Today, I learned about a special program. It's a computer program that some people are using for, in this case, soccer. So the soccer game, they analyze, they see the movements of the players, and they analyze the angle where that ball was done, the kick, the pass, how it was done. And they can start to predict, just by all these numbers and angles, if the ball was going to go where it was supposed to do. And, when you get to all this technology, AI and everything, and it's really about anticipating your next move and your opponent's next move. And as physicians, we really were not anticipating the opponent's next move. And I've been in conferences just recently, like this summer, where even the panelists were telling the physicians to just adapt to what was coming instead of anticipating what was coming, instead of going and changing to move to the table. And you don't move to the negotiating table from a lower position. You move to the negotiating table from an eye-to-eye position. And as physicians, we have to understand, instead of complaining about it, like we have to identify the problem, see what the options are, look for help, get together. And there's never been more help of physicians to get together than this time. But we do have to realize that if we want to survive as a physician, as a human being, because there's so many overwhelmed that end up in suicide, right? 300 to 400 physicians die from suicide every year. Not necessarily from over burnout, but that's a big component. We really have to understand what we're fighting against. And it's not a matter of just complaining. It's a matter of, okay, this is going to happen. We know this is going to happen because we've seen it happen. How we can get ahead so that we have the solutions ahead. And that's part of the mindset that we have to get. So entrepreneurship is a tool that has helped me to get out of burnout, having these conversations with these wonderful physicians. Oh my goodness, I never thought we would have such great connections and being able to have so many things in common, being so far away and being able to help each other. But we also have to understand that besides entrepreneurship, we really have to anticipate what the system is going to do rather than being reactive. We're treating the profession as we're treating patients in many times. The system is reactive instead of being proactive and prevention. So that mindset there needs to shift. It needs to be a cultural shift in medicine, I believe, for us to be able to survive. And I don't know how much we're going to be able to survive for how long as a profession, but I think that's a lot of work that we have to do for ourselves. And I don't know if you've seen similar things, if, any shifts, any other physicians talking about this before. But yes, we have options. I think that we really have to start thinking about ahead, like everybody's thinking ahead of us. You see so many companies opening up, and they're not physicians who are leading them. They're not. And we have allowed that to happen. And then we complain about it, but we have to stop complaining and then stop thinking, how can we communicate better with these people? We don't speak the same language, right?
Right.
We speak medicine. You speak osteophytes or...
Right. No, you're right. And unfortunately, many times they know that as a physician, that you're just looking for, what do I sign? Okay, how much am I going to get paid? Perfect. What do I sign? And not even knowing how to get out of the contract, but where do I sign mentality can definitely lead you down the wrong road.
Yeah, so we are so beaten, at that moment when you're looking for a job that you graduated, you're so happy because you've done the 100 hours a week studying to be able to get into that residency, and you're just ready for that big house and that big car, and then you're gonna go and sign everything. So
The
anything at
arrival
times, right?
fallacy. Yes.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
finally
arrival.
arrived. Yeah,
I
that
did
feeling.
it. I did it. I'm here. So one thing that we recommend, guys, is before, at this level, hopefully our people who are listening to this, they have done this and they don't have any problems with that, with contracts, just making sure that anything that you're going to sign, you get help. It's not an expense, it's an investment. So you invest in people who are going to teach you and guide you. Those are your lawyers who are going to be actually your friends if you choose them well. And the same thing with coaching, right? Like we are both getting coached for our businesses, and we know how to run businesses. You've had experience from your dad. You could go, hey, dad, how can I do this and that? But coaching is also something that we have to work on, and mindset work, right? So tell us about your mindset preparation, because you've done mindset work yourself and you've talked about this before in the past.
Yeah, so one of the main things I've learned with mindset is having a routine from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. Now, not to say that I'm perfect with that, but one thing that I found is affirmations is important. Being able to affirm myself. And that's something that I do with my kids as well. We wake up in the morning and say, I'm strong. I have a God-given purpose. I'm a go-giver. I'm a game changer. And because as soon as you walk out that door, you're going to meet opposition to that. And you need to be able to tell yourself and believe it. So when you meet that opposition, you'll be able to defeat it. So I think that's one thing. Also, meditation, writing down your goals, I think is very important. Because if you don't write them down, many times you'll just forget about kind of where you're aiming. But if you write down your goals and know your why, I think that's always inspiration to keep going when the times get tough.
How old are your children?
So 11, 9, and 7.
And all of you have the same affirmations in the morning?
So they do we go around and everybody will contribute.
That's awesome. So habits are very important for anybody to succeed. Which other habits do you have with your family?
We try to eat dinner together as many times as possible. We pray together. We pray over our children. We have our children pray over us and over themselves. So that's some of the things that we're really trying to instill in them.
That's great. That's very important. Do they meditate too?
They do. They can be very interesting with young kids.
I know. So I've tried that with my children. And, so we were able to have some consistency before they became their own self, their own minds, teenagers. That I think, they're going to come back. They're going to come back to it. But we did meditate going to bed. We did meditate in the mornings, even as part of our routine going to school. So we did have that as much as I could with them.
No, that's great. No, I think the meditation and the affirmations are a great way to get your kids involved in creating great routines for themselves.
So have you had any athlete tell you, hey, doc, you should do this thing? Have you ever had anybody talk to you regarding mindset? Like, why don't you do this, or anything, any particular lesson for one of your athlete friends or your athlete patients?
So the meditation piece is a big thing that I hear from athletes, actually, and we do it a lot in surgery, but seeing yourself do whatever you're going to do. So athletes, many times they'll sit down and go through every quarter of the game. That's the anticipation piece. I think as physicians, from a surgical standpoint, that's very helpful to be able to actually go through all the steps. Before you go into a meeting, visualize how you want that meeting to go. Even when an obstacle might arise, how you're going to answer that question. So I think the visualization piece is very important.
Okay, awesome. So if we're going to give specific tips about mindset, we've done tons, like we can go over them right now. So trying to mix mindset, physician, and maybe some entrepreneurship, any specific 3 tips that you would give to our physicians who are listening to this episode?
So I say, number 1, know that you are enough. For whatever you want to do, know that you have the ability and the capability of doing it. So I say that's number 1. as well as keep God first. And keep the main thing the main thing is what someone's told me. Know that God and family are, important, and keep them in their proper position in your life. I think that would be very helpful. And then the other thing I would say is surround yourself with like-minded people. If you want to be an entrepreneur, connect with other entrepreneurs, or even seek out coaching or mentorship would be another important topic.
Well, thank you very much. And if our listeners want to hear more about Dr. Derrick Burgees, where can they find you?
So I'm on social media, but I'd say the number one spot is go to my website, Dr. Derrick, DERRICK, thesportsdr.com. You can find all my episodes there from my podcast as well. I have a YouTube channel, Dr. Derrick Burgees. I'm on Instagram at the same, at Dr. Derrick Burgees, the sports doctor. So that's the way you connect with me, and reach out. On my website, you can send me feedback. You can even do a voicemail. I'm always willing to connect and collaborate with other physicians or other entrepreneurs or anyone who might need inspiration.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Burgees, to be here with us. As you've heard me say the different Puerto Rican pronunciations of your last name, and I hope that you have enjoyed every single variety of them, and I really appreciate your patience from that.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much. And thank you for being here. You're a great example, especially for those who are first generation, for everything. I'm part of a group. There's a the North American Neuromodulation Society, where we teach about these therapies to others. And I'm part of the DOC committee, the Diversity and Outreach Committee. And it's so important. We see so many who don't have in their communities examples of what they can be. So as, becoming a physician, I'm from Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, we did have, Puerto Rico, you're like kind of guarded there, because everybody looks like you, and that's not a problem. Coming up to the mainland, that was a different thing. There was really nobody like me, but by then I was set on my way, so that was okay. But then you get to the point where, yes, I'm still a physician, and then you get the other inspiration of where I'm going to go. What can I do? And then we have your podcast to guide us. So thank you very much, and you have an awesome day.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, guys, that's it for today. Stay tuned for more of our Design Your Physician Life podcast, which was brought to you today by our Maxillary Mastermind, an exclusive professional and personal development program for physicians, where you can learn about entrepreneurship. We will continue to bring you useful resources to develop your physician entrepreneur life, like we did today with Dr. Derrick Burgees from the TimeOut With The SportsDr podcast. You can actually find him at drderrickthesportsdr.com. That is DRDERICKTHESPORTSDR.com. Thank you for joining us. We hope you had a great time as we did. Stay in touch with us. Visit our website, maxillary.com. That is MAXALLURE. And please don't forget to subscribe, like us, give us 5 stars, and share the love with your friends and family. See you later. Thanks. Bye.
Please remember that Design is not providing specific financial, medical, or career advice. Our only intent is to stimulate your appetite for growth by sharing our experience and those of our speakers, coaches, and guests. Your personal growth and success will be unique to your circumstances and your hard work. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the show and look forward to seeing you next week.